We also sat down with Texas Senator Ted Cruz before an event at the Iowa Hall of Pride. We began by asking about granting automatic citizenship to the children of undocumented workers.
I think birthright citizenship as a policy matter doesn't make sense. We have right now upwards of 12 million people living here illegally. It doesn't make any sense that our law automatically grants citizenship to their children, because what it does is it incentivizes additional illegal immigration. But the heart of what Donald proposed, and indeed what I've introduced, is we've got to get serious about securing the borders. And if you go and you talk with law enforcement, as you know, I represent Texas. We've got a border with Mexico. When you go visit with law enforcement, when you visit with Border Patrol agents about what works, the number one most effective tool that works is boots on the ground. That's why I filed legislation to triple the Border Patrol. I was very glad to see that Donald Trump agrees with that proposal. The legislation I filed would also increase fourfold the fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft, so we use technology to monitor the border to supplement the boots on the ground. But then beyond that, 40% of illegal immigration doesn't come across the border at all. It's visa overstays. So the legislation I introduced would put in place a strong biometric exit-entry system so we can stop visa overstays. And finally, we should put in place a robust e-verify system so you can't get a job without demonstrating you're here illegally. It's not that we don't know how to solve illegal immigration. What is missing is the political will to get it done. And as president, I will get it done. We will secure the borders.
In 2011, you mentioned that basically, there's a quote here, you said the 14th Amendment provides for birthright citizenship. I've looked at the legal arguments against it, and I will tell you, as a Supreme Court litigator, those arguments are not very good. So, as a legal matter, though, it can't be touched, right?
Well, no, that's not true. So there are two different pieces. There's the policy matter and the legal matter. As a policy matter, I think now, and I thought then, we should end birthright citizenship. And in 2011, in that same conversation, I publicly said we should end birthright citizenship. Indeed, I said so in writing. Now, there's a second question: how does one do it? And constitutional scholars differ in terms of the way that it can be effectively done. Some constitutional scholars argue Congress could pass a law defining what the words in the 14th Amendment, subject to the jurisdiction, means. Others argue, no, it couldn't be done by statute. It must be done by constitutional amendment. My view, there's a good faith argument on both. Pursue whichever one is effective. But as a policy matter, we should change the law. But what I also said in that interview, and I think this is important, John, is we're facing a crisis with illegal immigration, a law enforcement crisis, a national security crisis. Any change in birthright citizenship, be it a statute or a constitutional amendment, will take many, many years. So the first priority should be securing the border, and we can do that with a president, unlike President Obama, who will actually enforce the laws and get the job done.
Let me ask you about religious liberty. You're hosting a gathering here in protection of religious liberty. In your speech announcing your presidency, you talked about it. You've talked about it ever since. We know that will be a part of your presidency. What, in a Cruz presidency, would same-sex marriage look like?
Well, when it comes to religious liberty has been a foundational passion of mine for decades. And I have a long record of standing and defending religious liberty and winning successfully. Whether it was defending the Ten Commandments monument on the state capitol grounds, winning 5-4 before the U.S. Supreme Court, defending the Pledge of Allegiance, the words "one nation under God," winning unanimously in front of the Supreme Court, or defending the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial, a lone white Latin cross where I represented 3 million veterans. Defending that memorial, we won 5-4 in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. This is a deep passion. And, you know, today we're pre-taping at this rally here in Iowa that has thousands of people in support of religious liberty. And what this rally is doing is it's telling the stories of ordinary people across the country who are here today, who stood up for their faith and who were persecuted. And, you know, a lot of folks in the media, that they belittle the threats to religious liberty. They say they're not real, they're made up. This rally is all about putting names and faces and people to the persecution. For example, one couple who's here is Iowa's own Dick and Betty Odegaard. They're a wonderful couple. They own an historic Lutheran church. For many years, the Odegaards hosted weddings in their church. A couple of years ago, 2 men came to them and wanted to have a same-sex wedding in their church. And the Odegaards, who are devout Mennonites, they very politely, very respectfully said that hosting a homosexual wedding ceremony in their church was contrary to their faith. They couldn't do it. They were sued. They went through protracted litigation. They paid $5,000 to settle the case, and they promised never again to host another wedding. They've gone out of business. They've laid off all their employees. Why? Simply because they stood up for their faith and religious beliefs. We're a nation that was founded on religious liberty, and the liberal intolerance we see trying to persecute those who, as a matter of faith, follow a biblical definition of marriage is fundamentally wrong.
All right, Senator Cruz, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.